Good evening. My name is Michael Foster. I'm a board member of MALA in Chicago. Welcome to a special celebration of life and legacy of Robert Joffrey, a legendary dancer, choreographer, and teacher. As an inclusive and arts and culture organization, MALA's mission is to celebrate cultural innovators such as Robert Joffrey, to recognize their contributions to our community and to honor their heritage and legacy. We are grateful to Illinois Humanities for the generous funding of the program through Activate History Initiative. Mala wishes to all those celebrating the Pride Month a joyous and a powerful month. Sorry, not a week, a whole month. Uh, at this time, I'd like to introduce Zainab Khan, the co-founder and president of Mala. Zainab?
Thank you so much, Michael, for the wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Happy Pride Month. And as Michael had mentioned, we are very grateful for Illinois Humanities for providing us with this wonderful grant to be able to share Robert Joffrey's story, life, and legacy this month with you. I hope that you really find his life as fascinating as I found it. This presentation and the research behind it was a labor of love. And I can't emphasize how exciting it is to have a story from the LGBTQ community that ties in Muslim heritage, that ties in arts and culture and all things Chicago all under one umbrella. And so we can go right into dive into his fascinating life. If there are questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. And if I don't have the answer for them, I will try to find them for you. So here we are celebrating the life and legacy of Robert Joffrey, a Chicago legend, an LGBTQ pioneer who also happened to be of Muslim heritage. We can go on to the next slide. I think I have a little bit of trouble. There we go. Okay. So Robert Joffrey was a dancer, choreographer, and founder of the ballet company Joffrey Ballet. He is credited with bringing a very distinct American approach to dance and reviving experimental ballet from earlier eras into contemporary dance. Now, Robert Joffrey was actually born Abdullah Jaffa Anver Bey Khan, and he was probably born around December of 1928. And he was the son of Joseph Joffrey, who was originally Dolha Anver Bey Jaffa Khan, and his mother's name was Maria Galet Joffrey. His father was Afghani and his mother was Italian, and they had met and married each other after immigrating to Seattle. Joffrey was of the elderly Joffrey was of Pashtun or Pashtun custom. And so his father had given him the name and birth date who had of a previous older brother who had died. So what is known is that his mother had had several miscarriages before he was born, and he was raised as his family's only child. Now, the Joffreys ran a series of restaurants and nightclubs in Seattle, and they had originally made their name with a Middle Eastern inflicted chili recipe that Joseph Joffrey and his brother had started selling from a street cart when they immigrated to America. I just found that fact to be so cool. Um, May we move to the next slide, please? So there's the photo of the elderly Joseph Joffrey and his mother, Maria. Okay, so here is the slide that goes into their family background. So as I had mentioned, they immigrated to Seattle and ran a series of restaurants and clubs with and started their business essentially through a chili recipe. Now, the elderly Joffrey, he Americanized his name, which is very common for a lot of immigrants that were coming from all over the world to the US at that time, but particularly coming from Afghanistan to America. That must have been a very tough acculturation and assimilation journey, simply because there really wasn't a community that he could be a part of. He was a very observant Muslim. He prayed 5 times a day, and he did not drink alcohol, but he did serve as a bartender at his Rainbow Chili Parlor and nightclubs. And Joseph and Maria had stayed married throughout Robert's life and until they had passed away. So, going into that, um, how Robert grew up, Robert really didn't follow his father's footsteps. He did not want to learn the Pashtun language. He did not want to adopt Islamic religious practices. And as I'll kind of go into it, Robert himself was very unique and really destined to be an artist from the very beginning. May we go to the next slide? So knowing a little bit about his background as an only child, he was small. He was 5'4" as an adult. He was very sickly. He had a lot of physical challenges and a very unyielding temperament. He was really someone that like followed the beat of his own drum. And he started dance at Dorothy Culper's dancing school, which was a dancing school right upstairs from the family restaurant. And from a very early age, Robert was destined for dance. It became an obsession for him. And going into ballet, like I said, Robert was very physically not your typical dancer. He was bow-legged, small, frail, but he had this fierce determination about him. And it wasn't until he was about 11 years old that he began studying under Ivan Novikov. That was where the potential really just catapulted for Robert Joffrey. When he was 11 years old, he got into training with Novikov, and he had his first non dancing role in a production of Petruchka, where it was, he didn't even have a dancing role, but he told Novikov that he was going to have his own ballet company and that he was going to perform Petruchka. And so that ambition was always there with him, even at the age of 11. Um, the interesting thing about Robert was that he really, really, really wanted to fit into school, but he just really was not the normative of what, an American school student looked like. His immersion in dance, it really conflicted with his desire to fit in. He was very friendly and sociable, but he really, really had to fight to pave his way and find his way through social acceptance. There was a quote from this woman, Meg Greenfield, who went to school with him, and their quote is, "Vividly, I can see Bobby in tights, dancing gracefully in a small space on stage. He danced, absorbed, seeming to be somewhere else." And so that was the definition of Robert Joffrey as a child and adolescent starting his way into dance. Can we go to the next slide, please? So Robert's career really started after he met Jerry Arpino. And Jerry and Robert were lifelong partners. Now, when he met Jerry, now Jerry um, was from New York. He was a veteran, and he arrived in Seattle around 1945. And he was Italian. He was the youngest of nine. And he quoted the first time he saw Robert, he wrote, "So I went and saw Bobby in class, and that was it. It was love at first sight." And Arpino then joined Novikov's studio, and the passion and the love for ballet and Joffrey, it really was just a beautiful story. The two began a relationship that was romantic at first and later professional, and it lasted the rest of Joffrey's life and Arpino's life, and it really profoundly shaped them. They were very intertwined in each other to help build and see each other's professional passion and also what American dance was about. May we go on to the next slide? Thank you. Now, now that we have the background of Robert, of Jerry Arpino, a little bit about their meeting, and how they crossed paths, we can kind of go into what they really started, going and moving their direction of their career. Now, Robert Joffrey, one of the things he's also known for in his choreography is that he really took the non-traditional, non-classical body type and he was able to transform it onto stage in different ways. And as a dancer, he had phenomenal ability, but as a choreographer, his vision and his direction, it really gave him the freedom and ability to make his vision, his artistic visions come to life through dance. And he was also known throughout his career, his openness to take a chance on dancers, dancers that may not have fit the bill of what it was like to fit a certain body type. Robert really, really broke boundaries when it came to hierarchical dance, classism, as you would say. And he really started a new mold and era and paradigm of what a dancer should be, who can perform, what their stage presence was. So he defined all of this through his, lifelong career. And that's really through his vision, through his passion, and through his ability to see the potential in his dancers. May you go on to the next slide? Okay, so Robert's journey into dance as a business, it's had a lot of highs and lows. Now, when he started launching his own company, there was a lot of issues with funding, with dancers, with cast members, but he's really been known as the Johnny Appleseed of ballet. He wanted to inspire people who, like him, as a young boy in Seattle, were unfamiliar with the form, with the business, with anything that was traditionally thought to be American dance. So he was really, really just a name and to do it. In 1953, Robert Joffrey was performing at the American Dance Festival on Broadway while he was in New York, and he tore a ligament in his calf, and he began to crawl off stage. And this is really the the incident that marked the end of his career as a dancer, and really where he turned all of his energy into establishing a business while also choreographing. Robert was also of course, with Arpino. So he had found the American Ballet Center in Greenwich Village, which is, a renowned name. And he was actually one of the first teachers in America to conduct all male classes. And that allowed him to really focus on the differences in male bodies and positioning and approach and choreography and storytelling through dance. So it's really been a very unique way of establishing American approach to classic ballet. We go on to the next slide. Okay, perfect. So while we kind of dive into some of this wonderful material, just a little more background on the Robert Joffrey ballet debut. The Robert Joffrey Ballet officially debuted at 92nd Street at the YMCA in 1954, and there were two works that were choreographed by him. And they're still actually performed to this day in Chicago and New York. The Pas de Deus. I don't have my French dictionary so well on me. And of course, Les Belles Masques. And Michael, I'm sure you can pronounce this a little better than I can. Um, However, what we want to relook at is while Robert Joffrey had this tremendous success in choreography and building a name and building an entire dance community around his incredible talent and vision, it did very little towards financial security for his company. And for 5 years, him and Arpino lived in a storage room in the back of their school in New York. They had no kitchen, no bathroom, no heat. All they really were focused on was promoting the company and the idea of a different American approach to classic ballet. So now in comes a very, um, up and down phase in Robert's life. In 1962, he met one of his most early patrons, Rebecca Harkness. She was a wealthy widow of Standard Oil heir. She was a dance supporter. She was an aspiring choreographer and a composer. So she had offered Robert a paid summer workshop at her estate in Rhode Island. And this was a rare opportunity for Robert without financial stress. And during that time, Harkness also funded an international tour that included performances even in Kabul, Afghanistan, where the theater was so cold that the applause was just silent and booming. Everyone in the audience would come to wear gloves. They toured in the Soviet Union. They, garnered critical acclaim, even though the company's history was very short and very eclectic in a place like Russia, which was so concerned with traditional ballet traditions. It's said to say that the Russians came to his performances just like bees came to honey. And that's the, impact that Robert had in dance. Now, during this time, Robert's relationship with Harkness soured because she wanted a lot more control and ownership, and obviously, she wanted her own artistic vision in the company. And Robert refused to budge. He stayed determined, and he often, during this time, lost a lot of his dancers to her because she had financial security. But Joffrey prevailed. The next year, he was asked to replace the New York City Ballet as a resident company at the City Center Theater. And, despite a lot of financial up and downs, he did appear on the Ed Sullivan Show, which made him kind of a household name and a rite of passage into mainstream American society. Can we go in the next slide, please? Excuse me one second. Hold on, please. Okay, hello. Thank you. So the highs and lows of the company. Although Robert continued to tour in smaller communities across the US, his real step into American mainstream came in January when he was featured on the PBS series called Dance in America. Now, this show reached over 3 million plus viewers. And when it came to people talking and sharing their experience after watching this, the majority of Americans who watched this felt that they were actually in a live concert performance while they were watching this through the silver screen. And his series or his program actually um, spurred a very large spike in Americans going to buy their first ballet ticket to see in person. So this was a big deal, not just in Robert Joffrey's world, but for the dance and ballet world. But still, his company continued to struggle financially. May we have the next slide, please? Joffrey's personal reputation during this time, although there was financial ups and downs, his personal reputation soared. He was appointed by President Jimmy Carter to the National Council of the Arts in 1977, and he also carried the torch for the opening ceremony of the U.S. International Ballet Competition in its first American venue of Jackson, Mississippi. Now, around 1985, Robert's own health started suffering immensely. He was infected by HIV, and his public stance were that his symptoms were caused by asthma and liver disease. He did write a will naming Arpino as the director and Richard England, his fellow student with Novikov, as an associate director. Robert, one of the most, uh, strongest, one of the strongest memories that many people had of him during his life was when his version of the Nutcracker opened in New York, approximately 2 months after his health really started deteriorating. He arrived in a wheelchair, completely frail, but towards the end, he managed to stand and salute his own company on stage. And into his last final days, Robert was still planning dances and insisted that he'd be well soon, that he'll be back, that he'll be ready and, to take on any dance challenges and shows and do continue doing what he loved to do the most, which was dance. And Robert died in March 25th of 1988 of complications from AIDS. Now, the Joffrey Ballet moved to Chicago in 1995, where it finally had found solid financial backing and has its own building to this day. And I would say that, throughout his career, the ups and downs of it, his legend and his legacy really has spanned not just in Chicago and New York, but across the world. And just as a closing remark, just to emphasize this amazing man's legacy and story, his quote is, to me, dance is everything that's good, everything that's beautiful, everything that's difficult. I couldn't exist without dance. It's my whole life. And his legacy continues on as his company, his reputation, the scores of Joffrey alumni who continue to dance, teach, and direct all around the US and around the world. And so this closes our presentation on Robert Joffrey. Um, the final slide, of course, shares the wealth of information that we were able to receive, all this wonderful information from. And of course, the National Library of Congress actually has a wonderful archival history about Robert Joffrey's life. And so please do check out some of these resources if you are interested in learning more. And again, if Mala can help guide or direct you in any way to some of the questions you may have, please let us know. So that is our conclusion of Robert's life. Very brief for such an incredible, amazing man, but really such an incredible story and so admirable, and such a prolific history of just dance, legacy, being of Muslim heritage, being a pioneer, bringing in inclusivity in the dance world. It's just been an incredible story. And it really was an honor for me to research into his life. So thank you for tuning in, for sharing with us. I will close out this program by thanking everybody, sharing that, Mala is very proud to be an ally with the LGBTQ community. It's part of our mission statement. We are so blessed to have so many amazing people from the community as part of our network of leaders. And I want to thank each and every one of you that has shared their story, the courage, the leadership that you portray by sharing with others. It means a lot to a lot of our young folks who may be looking for and grasping for some understanding and meaning and for support in their lives. So I'm very proud to be part of an organization that supports that. And I will sign this off. I apologize for the background noise as it's witching hour in my house right now, but I will give the mic to you, Michael, and thank you for your leadership and for, making this event happen. Michael, I think you're on mute. I think you're on mute, Michael.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we look forward to the next event and the next stories that we can bring to you, sharing our cultures, the differences, inclusivity of the arts and culture. Thank you.